Well, hello, everybody, and happy holidays, and welcome to the 117th episode of Stories of Service Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Work. And I am the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And today we have another amazing guest. We always have great guests on this show, and I'm so honored to be able to bring to you today Mike Ergo. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Teresa. Thank you so much for having me on. We've been talking back and forth, and I've been really looking forward to really getting in depth with you.
Oh, me too. And Mike is an interesting story in and of itself, and how we met. I saw him on another webinar, and I didn't know anything about his story. I just heard how he was talking. I think you were talking about mental health, and I was just so impressed with the way that you were able to express your thoughts on the issues. And I didn't know anything about you. I just felt like there was a story there, and thought I would follow up. And turns out you have an amazing story, and I feel that what you have to share will be very inspirational today. As I said in my show notes, I don't think there's a lot of men who are comfortable talking as deeply and as raw as you're able to. And I think that is a skill and a gift to have, because I believe that it makes all of us stronger when we're able to be vulnerable to a certain extent and show people what that looks like. Mike was raised in Walnut Creek, and he attended Northgate High School. He served in the Marine Corps infantry from 2001 to 2005, and he deployed to Iraq twice. After returning home, he was able to find his meaning and fulfillment using endurance sports and events. Speaking of which, he's been involved in 4 full Ironman triathlons so far, including the Ironman World Championship in Kona, Hawaii in 2017. And he will return to Kona in October of 2024 to compete once again. He now carries an American flag each Ironman in honor of a Gold Star family and for their fallen son or daughter. And he lives in Petaluma with his wife and 2 children, and he's the director of the North Bay Vet Center, a VA mental health counseling center for combat veterans and victims of military sexual trauma. Welcome again, Mike. So
Thank you so much.
So I want to start off with, I always ask anyone who has served in the military, which is usually like 99.9% of my guests, what inspired you initially to join the Marine Corps? How did that journey get started for you? Did you hear my question?
Oh, like we might be a little frozen here.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yeah, we're connected again. And I got the first part of that question, but what inspired me was that to join the military?
Yeah, like where where were you when you decided to join, and what was sort of the thinking behind why you decided to join the Marine Corps?
I wanted to serve the country, and I had a lot of experience serving through my church and gone on mission trips to different countries to serve other people. And I just was raised to really value service to others. And I wanted to serve the country in a way. This is right before 9/11 happened, so I had no idea that we'd be going into, war. Originally, I was going to serve in the Marine Corps band and play my instrument. And after 9/11 happened, I decided that wasn't really for me at the time, and I wanted to be out there fighting if other people were going to be fighting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was it about the infantry? Was there something that they told you that you'd be doing in terms of combat operations? Like, did you know that you were going to go into Iraq initially upon joining? I think we're having some connection issues. Let me see if I can get you back, Mike. Okay, there we go.
I'm back here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that I'd be going into combat, but
So I think we lost him for a minute. So if you guys bear with me, I'm going to see if he can call back in. Sometimes this happens. Oh, there you are again. One of the other options that we can always do, if this keeps happening, because I've had this happen before, we're live and things happen and we just roll with it. It's no big deal. You can try just joining from your phone. I've had people do that and it works perfectly sometimes, because if your Wi-Fi is crap, your what do you call it? The cell phone connection will be better. So we'll keep going. But if this keeps happening, that would be my suggestion. But so back to you. What was it about the recruiter and just with infantry that they said, oh, are you going to go right into combat operations? Or did you know that that was what was going to happen? Did you hear me?
I didn't know for sure I'd be going to combat, but I just knew that seemed like the hardest job that I could pick. And
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to do something really difficult. The other thing about serving in the Marine Corps for me was that I was raised in an upper middle class family. I had everything I wanted and needed. And I was worried that if I didn't challenge myself to do something that I thought was really hard, that only I could earn, that I would look back regretting my life. And the infantry specifically, I enjoyed the combat training I did in boot camp. And so I wanted to be there fighting in the miserable conditions that they put us in. And it just, for whatever reason, I just had this draw to do it. Maybe just prove myself, but also to be of service and to where I thought I was needed the most.
Yeah. And do you think that was there anybody that was you grew up with that you kind of saw as a role model, like somebody that sort of guided you into that path? Because I think that is kind of an uncommon path. Oops, I think we lost you again. All right. So as I said, one of the ways that we get around these technical issues is we'll see if Mike can go ahead and call in using his phone. So if you guys bear with us just a second, I think he will try to get back there. And of course, yeah, I'm going to call. Give me 2 minutes. Yep. So I think that's the best option is for him to call in. So we'll wait here just a second. I'll use this time to talk very briefly about who I will have on the show next week. Next week, I'm really excited. I'm going to be having Sherry Mason. She is a former SES employee and also now does motivational speaking and does a lot with leadership. The next week, I'm going to have a lawyer by the name of Chris McGee. He's coming on the show. He'll be talking a lot about whistleblowing. Actually, he is a whistleblower himself. He's had some experiences that he'll be sharing with us. So, and he has his own podcast as well. So, I'm really looking forward to talking to him. And then the following week, I have a dear friend of myself and my husband coming on the podcast, Aradia Robertson. She'll be coming on the show, and I'm really excited to have her on. She is a old neighbor of ours from when we lived on 19th Bay Street, and she does a lot within the neighborhood to keep people safe. And I'm really excited to have her on because I think that there are a lot of issues in some of our neighborhoods when it comes to crime. And she has been just a leading advocate for that. And now she is getting her license to be a private investigator. And so we're going to be talking about that. So I haven't seen him call in yet. So I hate to end this stream because when I end the stream, I have to start a whole new stream in order to get him back. So I am hoping that he'll be able to call in. But if not, I will start another stream and we will do this again. So I hope you guys will stick with me. Let me give him a few more minutes to try to get back on. But if he can't get on, then that's what I'll have to end up doing. Hey, Brian, I see Brian. He's on here. Brian is one of my husband's best friends. He tunes into many of the podcasts, and I'm really grateful to have him as a part of this journey and just what I'm trying to do with this show. Because I do believe that, we all need a little bit of help. We all need a little bit of guidance and support. And it's really exciting when I see some of the dear friends that I've, made and have over the years who join us on these phone calls. So let's give him a couple more minutes to get on, see if he can join us. Sometimes this happens too. It's part of having a live show is, yeah. Thanks, Matthew. Hi, Mike. Oh, wow. We do have a lot of people on who are just watching the show right now as I'm doing this solo to hopefully get Mike Ergo back here. But my husband is even on here and he says hi to Brian. Brian says hi, Harry and Mike. Mike, thanks so much for joining. Hopefully we can get Mike back here on the show, and hopefully he can click back on, because his story is absolutely amazing. I don't know if you guys had a chance to read the link that I put on the show notes, but wow. As I was just going through that, I was just so inspired and so touched by his story. Hi, Daniel. I see you out there as well. Um, so I just want to say, as I have this time here for a couple more minutes. Oh, good. We got you back. I don't have to keep jibber jabbering. So here we go. All right. So are you on your phone now, Mike?
Yes, yes,
Ah,
yes.
I can hear you. You are back. You are back. Oh, let me hold on. I was chit-chattering with the people who were on. So Mike wants to say shameless plug for independenceforamerica.com. So we'll give you that shameless plug. And it's more than just a shameless plug. Mike has taught us a lot about the election system. And we had a whole long conversation about electoral reform. So it was amazing in a previous podcast. But back to you, Mike. Tell us a little bit about what it was like. Did you know when you were enlisting in the Marine Corps, did you know, like, I'm going to go into combat operations, I'm going to Iraq?
Well, when I joined to be in the band and initially, and I didn't know, and I was worried that I wouldn't be going into combat. And I joined prior to 9/11, so I didn't know, I wasn't expecting anything. But after 9/11
No.
happened,
Okay.
yeah, I said, you know what, I want to find where I can get into combat.
So you changed. So you joined as a musician, and then you changed your MOS as you transitioned out of that. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Yeah, I joined to be a musician, and then I transitioned out to be in the infantry so I could be part of the fight and be on the front lines.
Wow. How did your family react to that? Were they surprised?
They were surprised and very worried. You know, my parents. You know, initially I was going to have a full ride scholarship to academic scholarship to a university in Germany, and when I joined the military, they were disappointed that I was doing that because they just had bad experience with people in the military. And then after they saw me graduate, yeah, they were very proud. But then when I told them that I was going to the infantry, they were extremely worried, given that, you know, we'd been attacked and Afghanistan had started, and then Iraq looked like it was heading towards a war in the late 2002.
And then you went over to Iraq, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were also involved in Fallujah, correct?
Yes. The second Battle of Fallujah in November 2004. That was my second deployment there. And yeah, we took place in that urban combat, which at the time was the largest urban combat battle since the Battle of Hue City in the Vietnam War.
What was that experience like for you in terms of like the teamwork and the camaraderie, and just being able to deal with such a difficult situation? Because it sounds like you had a pretty stable childhood, stable upbringing, and so you came into Fallujah, this incredibly stressful, most probably stressful situation I would imagine of your life up to that point. How was that for you, and how was it for your team?
I think that there were two specific periods of that battle for me internally. And the first part of that was, I hope I don't die. That was kind of my mantra. I want to keep my guys alive. That was my number one priority, keep them alive. And I also didn't want to get killed. But once I came to this acceptance that I probably was going to die. And I said, you know what? Okay, if that's how it is, so be it. But I'm going to do the best I possibly can to serve my guys here and not let them down and bring them back safely. And once I accepted that there's a very real possibility and likelihood that I would be killed there, it took the pressure off. Not that I had given up on living, but now my focus was to do well and instead of not get killed. And I think that a great analogy would be, you know, if you're playing baseball, if you're worried about striking out, you're not going to do well. But if you get up there trying to get a hit, you're going to do a lot better. And that's the best I can explain how my mindset shifted. And so it was an intense amount of stress, intense amount. I think the stressful part was how many times can you kick open a door with somebody waiting to shoot you and survive that encounter? How many times can you roll the dice and survive that? And that began to be part of the conversation that we'd have on our off time. You know, the days we weren't kicking indoors and we were on, you know, quick reaction force or just waiting to go in. So it became stressful the longer it went on during that month.
And how did you guys cope with it day to day? Like what were some of the coping mechanisms that you had in place to deal with that in real time? Was it just the camaraderie of not wanting to let your teammates down and just the brotherhood? I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
or
It was the brotherhood and, you know, having a gallows humor, just kind of joking about death, you know, like joking about, hey man, I bet they're going to play some really lame music at your funeral, won't they? You know, or, or just, talking about anything else except where we were.
Mhm.
Um, but there was kind of, I think after the first few firefights, you know, that the nerves were, will I hold up? Will I be there and fight back and support my team, or will I cower and run away? And after that fear went away, when those of us who didn't run from the battle and didn't run from combat knew that we could uphold our end of the bargain in terms of what we were trained to do, the conversation was more focused on, you know, the letters we get from home. And I still have saved every single letter my wife sent me. We were just dating at the time, you know, with perfume and pictures from back home and everything like that. And so there was a feeling of sadness that I might not be able to experience that. But in terms of coping, just joking around a lot of practical jokes, a lot of listening to music, a lot of talking about what it was like to be back home, you know, and different experiences from the guys I was with, from where they were versus, you know, Upper Peninsula of Michigan versus the Bronx, New York versus, you know, Atlanta, Georgia, or to me in Northern California, and kind of learning from each other.
And then once you that second tour ended and you came back home, was the decision always going to be to get out of the Marine Corps, or had you thought about perhaps staying in and trying to keep going up the ranks?
I thought about staying in before that deployment, and then even during that deployment. And I was really focused at the time on trying to pass the indoctrination test to be part of the reconnaissance units, be part of the battalion reconnaissance, and then force reconnaissance. But after that second deployment, I was my nerves were fried. I
Yeah.
didn't know how I could possibly see any more combat and survive it. And it would just, you know, the things I saw kind of played a loop on my head, like these intrusive thoughts I would have. And I was feeling very jumpy, and I wanted to go home. And I decided that, you know, if I want to go back in, the Marine Corps has been around for, you know, 200 odd years. It'll be around if I want to go back in. But I wanted to take a break because I just had this feeling, which is part of the post-traumatic stress disorder, of kind of impending doom, that something bad was about to happen. And since I didn't know what post-traumatic stress was, I just figured I had, you know, some kind of knowledge that, like, if I was to go back in combat, I'd be killed for sure.
Mhm. And you didn't you it sounds to me like you really didn't have a lot of trauma growing up. Like this was from what
Yeah,
you're telling me. Okay, so this
right.
was your traumatic experience. And oh gosh, I mean, that's such a different experience than I think it's a lot of people, because I think a lot of us who joined the military, especially some of us who were, you know, joined as a junior enlisted, we had some trauma in our childhood,
Mhm.
and then we go into the military, and the experiences that we have in the military sometimes re-traumatize us. But in your
Yeah.
case, this was the first major time that you've had this type of trauma, and yours was life and death. I mean, it was a very extreme situation. Were you one of the ones that could sort of help some of the other teammates that were not as able to cope at the time?
You know, I think once we got back, we joked about it, because we weren't sure how bad each one of us was doing. And so we joke about, hey, you're not starting to see things, are you? You know, I joke about that, or you're not having hallucinations or anything, are you? That'd be crazy. But at the same time, as I was lying down in my rack in my room, you know, I kind of rubbed my eyes and I could see, you know, an insurgent kind of staring out of my bathroom, looking back at me. Or wasn't sure if I saw something moving behind the bushes where there was someone trying to get the drop and ambush me. And just things that I knew cognitively were not there, but felt so real too at the same time that I was really struggling. I actually went to try to get help for it because I was worried about myself, and I was worried about how effective I was as a person to be around, if I was more of a liability at that point. And there was nothing set in place, and this is early 2005, February 2005, and my command said, there's just nothing, man. You're just going to have to tough it out, you know. And so, you know, I just turned to alcohol and just drank as much as I possibly could from that day on.
So back in that day, in around 2005, I mean, PTSD and combat stress. I mean, people knew from Vietnam that there were
Mm-hmm.
people who had combat stress, but there just wasn't, and it wasn't, and I can tell you from, I mean, I've been in since 1996, getting help and going to therapy just wasn't a thing for
Mm-hmm.
so many years. And if you did, people would just give you shit about it.
Yeah, especially in my line of work, you know, the infantry guys, you know, you'd say, "Oh, that guy's going to go see the wizard. He's trying to get out of deploying, or he's trying to get out of something." So it was looked upon so negatively that anybody who sought help was automatically suspected of trying to abandon everybody else there and couldn't be trusted. And so it
Mhm.
wasn't seen as a proactive thing to do. It was seen as a shameful coward's move to go seek any kind of mental health or psychological counseling.
And then, so you get to this place where all these things are happening. You don't have a way to seek help, or you don't know how to seek help. So you start to just drink and drink. How long did that go on for?
That went on for about 7 years. And I got out of the Marine Corps the summer of 2005. I went and started community college back home in Northern California. Was honorably discharged, and you know, I was moving ahead in life. You know, my wife and I got married in 2008, and it was things were going well on the surface, but I started to notice that I was having more panic attacks. I was having more intrusive thoughts. I would drive to school, to college, and I'd start sweating or shaking so badly, I'd have to turn around and drive home, and I'd just stay inside and use either alcohol or cannabis to calm my nerves. And they like cannabis especially would help me relax, and
Sure.
alcohol too would help me to kind of numb out. And so this is the only tools that I knew how to use. It went on for a long time until I was just creating so much damage through my drinking and drug use that my wife eventually told me it's got to stop. I love you. I can't go down this path with you. You know, you're becoming someone who's totally different, and you either have to choose me or all these drugs and alcohol that you use. And I remember it was July 11th, 2012, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna quit this stuff. And for me, it was terrifying because I was like, well, I guess life's just gonna be terrible, and it's gonna be either constant panic, sadness, or boredom. I didn't know what was next.
So when you decided to stop, did you think at that point, because you're out of the Marine Corps, there's less of a stigma, maybe. Did you
Hmm.
and did you have VA disability? Had gone any of that, or could okay.
I got a little bit, you know, initially I was rated pretty low as PTSD because, like most, or I should say many service members, especially men, I think, you know, would minimize what we'd seen because it was just kind of ingrained into me, at least in the Marine Corps, you minimize any personal or emotional pain that you feel because you need to be able to be an asset rather than a liability on the battlefield.
Yep.
And so I had that. The stigma um, wasn't there like it was in active duty,
Mhm.
but I was also it was more confusing because I didn't understand what post traumatic stress was. All
Mhm.
I knew was that there was chaos, and I didn't like it. You know, there was fear. I was afraid. Like sometimes I'd be walking down the stairs and I would literally feel paralyzed. I kind of slumped down because I didn't know why at the time, but then maybe days later I'd say, you know what, I flashed on, you know, moving down the stairs and getting shot at from a few feet away. But in the moment and while this is going on, it was just chaos and it was scary because I didn't know when it was going to happen again. And other than the fear and the PTSD, I, you know, had a lot of survivor's guilt, and I felt guilty about coming back home when a lot of my friends who I thought, you know, were better Marines than I was, didn't come back, and I just didn't feel like I could face their families and what I would ever say to them too.
So what got you over the hump, or what pushed you to seek out psychiatric care? How did that get started?
Uh, I got some along the way after I got back. What really helped me was having a Vietnam vet neighbor, and he was another infantry guy. He was an infantry captain in Vietnam with the Army, and he looked at me. He's like, "Hey, man, you kind of look like I did when I got back from Vietnam." And I surmised that was not a good thing. And he's like, "Yeah, no, it's you need to talk to somebody, just like I talked to somebody, and it's okay." And he took me to a place, you know, where I now work at a VA vet center, and I only went because I respected this man and was going to honor, you know, his request that I go there, because, you know, I was embarrassed of, like, when you talk about feelings, really the only feelings that were acceptable for me to have were being happy, being really pissed off, or being excited and aggressive, angry. You know, feeling scared, that was not acceptable. Feeling sad, that was not acceptable. And so I said, you know, this is stupid because I had three things going against me. Men don't have feelings, Marines don't have feelings, and especially, you know, infantry, we don't have feelings. And so it was just going to be a waste of time. But then I realized that it wasn't about sitting on a couch and you know, being encouraged to cry and feel weak. It was more about being able to express and understand and unpack the chaos that was in my head. And when I got the first taste of what that was, it's like, oh, this is okay. It's not trying to change me into a weak person. It's trying to understand, help me understand what I had experienced and where I could go from there.
How did you decide to trust the therapist, the person you were talking to? Because I think a lot of men, in general, and I can even say it as a woman, I have a hard time trusting another woman therapist. I just had to talk with somebody about that recently because I've
Yeah.
had an issue with a woman in my past, and so and that's something I need to work through, to be honest. And so, how were you able to do that? How were you able to trust enough?
I think that on a couple different ways, it was bad enough that I needed to at least attempt to trust. But then on the other hand, so my first therapist and most, like, the therapists I've had have been women. And for me, that dynamic of not being pitied, but being nurtured in a healthy therapeutic way was a good match for me. And I think that when I trusted was that when I said something, there was not a response of, "Oh, you poor baby," or a shaming that I was experiencing that, but there was understanding of, yeah, that sounds pretty rough. I mean, and this individual, she didn't say, like, "I totally get it," because she didn't, but she says, "I can see how that would be really tough." And it wasn't like the canned kind of cliche therapy responses, "Oh, thanks for sharing," or anything that felt disingenuous. It was like, "Yeah, that sounds like it really sucks," you know, like, I bet it's hard to live with things like that, and just kind of an acknowledgement, a validation of the things I was going through. And I was like, okay, I can tell she's listening. I can tell she
Mhm.
cares, and I can tell she's not trying to BS me. So those three things just rung of spoke of authenticity, and I really was craving that.
Did you do all this through just cognitive behavior therapy, or did you use like EMDR, or what were some of the, if you're okay sharing, what were some of the
Yeah.
treatments?
Some was, initially it was just talking through what I had seen, because I didn't even understand what I'd seen. So things were kind of being unpacked in my head, and I was understanding like what was going on, what was happening,
Making sense of it.
making sense of it. And then I went into doing some EMDR, and that really, really stopped the fight or flight from kicking in so much. Um, EMDR sounded ridiculous when I heard of it.
Oh, it did to me too. And can you explain to people, Mike, who are watching,
Sure.
what EMDR is? Because I thought it was all foo-foo magic BS when my therapist explained it to me. So go ahead.
So EMDR, it stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and it is essentially a way of connecting the different parts of your brain to process trauma and learn from it, and learn that that was then, this is now. It's done by somewhat distracting your mind, using the different hemispheres of your brain, while someone can either wave their finger back and forth, you can hear beats in your head that play like a metronome, or you can watch a light go back and forth, or you can feel a tactile sensation in your hand, or all combination of all three. And yeah, when someone said they were going to wave their finger and I was going to magically feel better, I'm like, it sounds like a carnival trick, And the nice thing is that my NDR, my therapist at the time said, I don't want you to just trust that I'm saying, because it sounds crazy. So I want you to look at these studies that have been done, and I want you to look at the feedback from these other people who have practiced and used it, and see what they say before trusting me to do this. I'm like, that sounds actually very honest. She wasn't trying to sell me on EMDR, which is
Neither
nice.
was my therapist. I completely understand. My therapist is like, this isn't rocket science. It's basically distracting your brain, and it's letting your brain separate from the trigger. That's how I thought about it. Like, so instead of getting all emotional and being like, oh, like this about whatever the traumatic experience is, it allows you to just kind of go into that doing mode, or that node where you're not emotional. And so, and then that's when you start to process that memory. Is that what it was like for you?
Exactly what it was like. And if my experience of it, so when I experienced processing the death of my best friend, when
I think. Oh, can you say that again? I think you
connection.
froze just for a second. Yeah, just for a second.
No problem. When I started processing it, it felt like a fast dream. It felt like a fast-paced dream where I was seeing things that happened, some things that didn't happen, some things that didn't feel like they were even related to my friend dying, and feeling very emotional while it was going on, but not overwhelmed. And then at the end, feeling just kind of resolution, like, oh, like this makes sense, but I'm no longer triggered by it. Like, I'm not happy that my friend died, but I'm no longer triggered. And I did this for other occasions, for firefights and things. And I'm like, yeah, that time sucks. It was terrible, but I no longer felt like I was about to die anymore. So that was a huge bonus.
Yeah. How it really is such a blessing. And I think we had discussed earlier in a previous conversation that you also are a practitioner yourself now, right? You do EMDR. And I think that's amazing. And I think that it's such just an incredible tool, and something that I would love to see practiced more throughout the therapeutic community, not just psychiatrists, not just social workers, but I mean, it's such an amazing tool for people to separate from that trigger. Have you found it to be useful on others that you've done it with now as a practitioner?
So many people, I've seen the change from going from, constantly being in fight or flight to basically feeling safe in their own body. And I think it's important to pause and just kind of say what that means. When I could not feel safe in my own body for a long time, and I just felt like everything was chaos, everything was bad, something bad was about to happen. So I just couldn't feel right unless I was on another planet, through all the chemicals I was using to affect my brain, through cannabis, pills, cocaine, alcohol. But feeling safe in my own body was such a relief. Like, I didn't need to be anywhere. I didn't need to be consuming something. I didn't need to be kind of like trying to scratch that itch.
Yeah.
I could be, and it was okay. And that was for people who have lived with trauma for so long. It's such a revolutionary thing to be able to be okay in your own body.
It's so freeing. I mean, everything that you're
Mm-hmm.
describing is what I went through this summer. I mean, it was raw. The months that I was going through it, I can just remember week to week. I mean, my husband can tell you, like, I was like crying all the time just because I was finally like feeling sad and sort of grieving for what I had hoped having, as a child. And then as a after some time though, I sort of just made sense of it and I just kind of I moved forward and it was such a relief. Like I felt like a weight had been like lifted off my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an incredible treatment. And so so you're going through this EMDR therapy and you're starting to heal and figure out a way to move through it. It was still shitty and it still sucked, but you now
Mm-hmm.
are in a place where you can move forward. How did endurance sports play into this as well?
Yeah. So before I even did EMDR, I had a friend when I just stopped. It was my 30th birthday, and I had been sober for less than a year. A friend gave me a registration to a half marathon for my birthday, and I was like, "This present sucks. This is bullshit." Yeah, but I was like, it harnessed my pride, which is great, harnessed my ego, and so I said, "I'm gonna make sure I do this thing." So I started training up for it, and I just remember rounding a corner in my neighborhood, and I just had this kind of check-in with myself, and I'm like, I feel okay. I feel safe in my body. I didn't use those terms, but that was the feeling I had. Like everything's okay, and I hadn't felt that sober ever. I only felt that when I was, really high, and um, so I said, there's something to this endurance sports thing. So consistent working out, feeling good in my body, being able to move forward. And when I was depressed, when you're depressed, you're stuck. And so if you can physically move forward, it unlocks something in your brain because, the metaphor, the analogy can feel a little on the nose, but if you're moving forward, you're able to get through something if you're taking steps forward. And that can be as simple as walking or running. And so I was like, there's something to this. And once, where it really took off with endurance sports, I was swimming in the San Francisco Bay with some other veterans. I was running a lot. I was doing CrossFit. I was doing endurance challenges. But then I was on vacation in Hawaii and I saw the Ironman World Championships taking place. And it was scary how far they were going. I mean, you swim for 2.4 miles, you ride your bicycle for 112 miles, and then you run a full marathon, 26.2 miles right after that. Boom, boom, boom. And I got scared, but it was a kind of fear that I knew that probably was my next step, is something I should try to do. But it really clicked when I figured it out. I can honor my friends that I lost. I wear their names on my jersey when I ride, and so I dedicate the performances, the accomplishments, the finishes, the races, all to them and their families. And then all the pieces came together. Like I wasn't just stuck with grief anymore. I could use my feelings to propel me further, and I could do it for something that kept their memory alive. Because I'd have people ask me on the race course, who were those people on the back that you wear? And I was able to tell a story about my friend Todd Godwin, or my friend Brad Faircloth, or all the other Marines that I'd lost, and say, like, these are some guys that I had the honor of serving with that I really loved, and their life was cut short by this war, but they still live on in their memory, and they still live on in that way. So they're not fully gone.
I love it. It sort of just gave purpose and it gave you sort of this incentive to keep going. And I can say that that's a really powerful way to start to work out. Even now, I'm very consistent about working out. Well, I have a ski trip next month in the French Alps, and I don't want to be sore and not
Yeah.
be able to move every day. So I've been working out every single day. And I think but like what you're saying is so true. And I mean, it gave everybody an opportunity to ask you about what you were doing and why you were doing it. And I'm sure it allowed you to connect with people that you would have never connected with otherwise.
Oh, completely. I've got to meet, not just Ironman World Champions and how graceful they were and gracious they were about listening to my story, but I've connected with Gold Star family members, and one of my really close friends now is a Gold Star mother, and we've we started the movement where we carry a flag for a local Gold Star family, and I've met people who have in just overcome incredible things in their lives, and
Mhm.
and being able to hear their stories. Like my friend Derek is, the first one of the first American at least, to finish an Ironman with a transplanted heart, and he had open heart surgery, and with his new heart, he's completed multiple Ironmans, and just the athletic accomplishments are impressive, but the motivation and hearing people inspired to do things that sound really hard in order to honor other people or to help people has been really fun.
I love it. Absolutely love it. We have a few other people who've joined, and I'm sorry if I haven't brought your comments in, but John Paul D. Lang, he says, yeah, PTSD was not an official thing until
Mm-hmm.
1980. And he also says that, we've got to remove the stigma and make it okay to talk about what we think when we have symptoms of unresolved trauma. And absolutely, that's what a lot of the show is about today, is about
Mm-hmm.
taking those steps to be able to say that it is okay to talk about these things. And Jason Spalding says, very interesting. And Fritz, I see you there. Great commentary. So thank you. So thank you, everybody, for joining us on this amazing conversation about such an important issue. And I love what you did here. You did the therapy, then you did the exercise, you had the support of your family. That's a good question. How did your wife and your family react as you started after 2012 and you started to get this therapy and you started getting into these endurance sports? What was the reaction?
A lot of support, and from a lot of my family was kind of the message of like, I don't know how I can support you, but I want to. That was the
Mhm.
general theme. And my wife is supportive of all, the races and the training. And, I explained to her, because she was worried, like, is this just another addiction? If you're doing
Right.
all these
Oh yeah.
endurance stuff, right? And it can be. It
Can.
can be.
Oh yeah. For
It
sure.
definitely can be. And so we'd have discussions, like open and frank discussions, like, when does this become another addiction? And I'd say, well, if I'm spending more time trying to, acquire these things, do them or recover from them, and missing family events or change who I am because of it, then it's an addiction. But if I'm becoming a better person when I'm around you because of this, then I believe it's beneficial. And so we discussed, like, how many races to do per year. Can we make it fun so we can make it go to a fun place to do the race? Can we set up a specific family time? So there's a lot of planning around, because I said, you know what, if we think about it, it could be me, my old life, like just being drunk all the time everywhere, and so it's, I wanted to, and so the support was there. We just had to figure out how much made sense and where and when.
Yep. I can relate. When my husband first got out here to England, first year we were here, I was traveling so much for work and he was planning a lot of the trips. And then things kind of tapered down. And I could tell like he just got to a point where there just wasn't anything for him. And then he was bored. And then he started a volleyball meetup group. And now he's been organizing he designed a logo, he's designed things to put on the bags, he's got two meetings per week, one indoor. He actually now just in the winter, two indoor ones. He's got a Sport As app. He collects the money for it. I mean, it's just, and it changes everything. But like you said, we talk about the same kind of conversations in our marriage. Like, does my podcasting or does his volleyball or does whatever we're doing on the side, does it interfere with us? If it interferes with us and our time together, then we have to take a back seat to it and then put it aside. But at the same time, these things make us who we are too.
That's it completely, Teresa. And I think like in a marriage and a partnership, you want to encourage the other person to be the best version of themselves and to follow their own mission for their life.
Yeah.
And you find that balance,
You do.
like my wife understands and I understand with her the things she wants to do, like there'll be times where I want to spend time with her, but she's doing something that's important to her, and I'm like, I don't want to take away from who she is to have a marriage, but this, so you find that balance, how you can support somebody and grow together that way, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of the wonderful parts about life. So we didn't talk about your work at the North Bay Vet Center. Tell us a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, because I didn't even know there were such a thing as vet centers until I went through TAP class and learned
Yeah.
about them. So tell the audience, for those of who don't know, what is a vet center?
So vet center, it's interesting because it's a pretty ambiguous name, vet center. The VA vet center, though, like we're talking about, is an outpatient mental health counseling center, and they're out in the community and they're not attached to the VA hospitals, and so there's no medical doctors there. It's just you come in. It's kind of a warm, homey feeling. We have a group room. I made sure we have exercise equipment there for people who want to come in and work out. I have my dog that comes and greets people. Yeah, we have a fishing group where I take people fishing on Fridays.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, so we do individual counseling and group counseling. And we have, our holiday parties. We have our open houses where people get together. And it was started by Vietnam vets initially as a peer counseling form, when they got back and didn't get the services they needed from the VA hospitals. And it just grew into what it is now, mental health professionals, oftentimes who are vets themselves, helping other
Mhm.
veterans and trying to give them therapy along with inserting like, okay, now that you're out, how can you use the strengths you have to find purpose in this new life you have as a veteran?
I love it. And so did you decide after your therapy and your treatment to say, I'm going to be a social worker and work with
Mm-hmm.
vets? That's so
Exactly how
cool.
it went. Because um, I was trying to just take classes and see what was I wanted to do, but I was missing that kind of mission, that purpose. I'm a very purpose driven person. Like I
Mhm.
don't work out just to work out. I need a purpose.
Right, me too. Yeah,
Yeah, like,
I'm the same way.
and so while some of the classes were fun and I was studying interesting things, none of it stuck until I was sharing this kind of frustration with my therapist, and she said, "Have you ever thought about doing this? Working with people and helping other veterans?" And I was like,
Mhm.
I'd experienced some hope, and I didn't want to kill myself anymore, and I wanted to continue to live. So I said, "It's exactly what I do. And then so I changed everything in my community college, and then went to my 4-year university after that and graduate school, just so I could work at a VA vet center, what I'm doing now."
Wow. So you basically charted gosh, everything you say, I'm like, oh, that reminds me, because I did the same thing with public affairs. When I found out there was a public affairs community in the Navy, I'm like, oh, shoot, what's my path
Yeah.
now? Oh, God, I got to get a degree in communications. I got to get an internship at a newspaper. I've got to go be a collateral duty public affairs officer on a destroyer, on my first ship. So, yeah, that's what you did. You were like, okay, now you see where the end is, where the end of the road will be for your career. What do I have to do to get there? And so you changed everything to go down that path. Wow. So but you didn't know like that you would get a job at a vet center. You were just kind of like, I'm going to throw this out there and see if this works, right?
Yeah, I just the way I've been able to navigate life so far that's worked out is, here are my intentions and here's what I want to do. And I know it's not a guaranteed thing I could do this, but um I have a feeling that I will be placed in a position where I can be of service. And so
Mhm.
knowing that helps propel me forward. I don't exactly know, like when I started Ironman, and it's a spiritual component too to my life. And when I started, Ironman, I didn't know why. But when I started, I was like, this just feels like something I should do. But when then it became clear that I could honor my fallen friends, I'm like, okay, now it makes total sense why I'm part of this. And so it feels Like there is a big spiritual component. It's part of my spirituality of being of service and trusting that things will work out if my intentions are right and I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that that's like the best path in life to go down is you sort of have an idea of where you want to be and you have those good intentions of working towards it. And it may not turn out exactly the way you want it to, but it will turn out in a way that will be of service to others and hopefully put you on the path that you're meant to go down. So I just, oh gosh, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm trying to think if I have any other questions, but I honestly don't think I do. Is there anything that I've not addressed that you'd like to discuss or ask?
I think just one thing that I've been very lucky, and I just want to share this as a kind of a gratitude, is that for me, November is when the Battle of Fallujah took place in 2004. It was a time of a lot of loss. We lost, I think, most of the guys we lost in that deployment was in 1 month, and of the 21 we lost total that deployment. So it was the month that kind of was like death and doom. But I was so fortunate that both my children were born in November, and so I'm able to celebrate that too with renewed life and celebration too along that. So the one thing I've learned too that's really helped me, and I can help other people, is that when I've been hurting because I miss somebody who's died, is that I realize that I hurt so much because there's an even greater love of connection there, and that when I was able to dive down below the numbness, the anger, the sadness and hurt, and below that was the love and connection. And so for those of us who have lost people we care about and are grieving, it's okay. We don't have to lose that connection with them. That'll never go away. And I just know that when I'm hurting, that I can dig down deeper and feel the love. Like I think of my friends quite often, almost every day. And I think of, it's sad that they're gone, but I've been able to do a lot of that grief work and trauma work to where I can say now, I miss them still, I do. But I'm also really grateful that I had the opportunity to know them.
And I think that if you hadn't had that experience, you wouldn't be in the position that you are today. So
Exactly. I can imagine my life any other way. And so people have asked me that question a lot. Would you, if you knew what you know now, would you, serve again and do that? And absolutely, absolutely. Because
absolutely.
I feel of service, and that's just been a driving force for my life.
And we had a couple other people join. We had a lot of people join this call. So thank you so much for so many of you who've tuned in. And Eric Duckworth, he says the best thing loved ones can do is ask, what does support look like to you, instead of trying to fix. It's a great point. And he also says support is asking. Oh yeah, he said that right there. He's just the same comment. And he also says, put in here, I think of my 18 lost friends, soldiers, and colleagues almost every day too. So people are really relating to what you're saying and connecting. John Paul D. Lang says, thank you for your courage and commitment to speaking out. The healing journey to our authentic selves will never end, but it sure beats staying where we are. Thanks for doing this, Teresa.
So true.
All right, Mike. I just feel like we could talk for hours, but I don't want to keep you. I can hear your family in the background.
Yeah,
and,
we're excited. The kids are going excited. I'm going to take them to a movie about ducks today, so they're excited.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much. I will meet you backstage just to say goodbye for 1 minute as I do my closing. But I want to thank everyone for taking the opportunity to join us today. Sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning, but I think we worked through those pretty well. And I want to thank you all. Please, thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. I'm going to go full screen now. But thank you guys so much. I will see you all next week. We have another guest. And thanks so much for joining us and being a part of the show. And I'll talk to you all later. Have a wonderful evening now. Bye.